got some turbulence up ahead. Reach out to the pilot's planner.
Welcome into election week, and we are back on the Wealthy Pilots podcast to talk about politics and taxation. Now, I got to throw out this caveat for the folks checking us out this week, or even if you check this out a little bit later, because it doesn't really matter, right? Because time keeps moving on. We're taping this the morning of election year 2024, so we don't really have a result yet, Scott, obviously, on who's winning or who may win, but we're still going to talk about taxation and how it just kind of is going to be a thing no matter what, right? Because we got $36 trillion in debt out there. So we got to kind of talk about that angle of anything else. But how you doing this week, my friend?
Really good. I mean, it's the political Super Bowl today.
It is.
Maybe more accurately would be the political World Cup.
Might be.
You know, it's we have or the political Ryder Cup or something. You know, it's every 4 years, and it's a big night. I miss the days though where you used to be able to go to bed at a decent time and know who the president of the United States was.
Well, that's a whole can of worms we probably don't want to touch this week on the podcast. But
I don't feel like I don't have high hopes that tonight when I go to bed we'll know. I think they're going to be counting for a little bit, so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I know that you and I were just chatting before we got rolling on this. So when we're done with this, we'll actually, I think we're both heading out in our prospective locations to probably go out and vote and grab lunch or something like that. So your part. Go do your, no matter how you feel about whatever, get out and vote. It is important, and it is something that we should all, do our civic duty on. So that's my little piece there. But let's talk about the taxation side. That's why we're here, talk about the financial piece of this. We got problems. It doesn't really matter who wins. Walking into this election, we got problems, right? From a financial standpoint, the government doesn't own a patent. I guess maybe they own a patent, but they don't make money off of selling iPhones or whatever, right? So we are their product in form of taxation, right? And there's some scary information out there, some scary things to think about when it comes to what we could be looking at in a possible taxation future. So let's talk about it.
I mean, it's that Uncle Sam song, right? I mean, I got 99 problems, but being rich ain't one. So when we look at, the taxation side, this is one I think we definitely have some historical data that tells us there are definitely implications to the elections, right? So if we look at the investing topic we talked about last time, on that investing topic, it was very clear we were saying, don't be making a bunch of emotional investment decisions based off of who wins today. Bad idea. Now, on the tax side, we also have a historical insight. And so we are going to find out here in the next couple of days, after all the tallies are done, we'll have a good insight tonight in terms of what Congress is going to look like. Hopefully tonight, but probably by tomorrow, we'll know who the next president of the United States is going to be and what kind of policy is going to get driven in from a leadership perspective, really economic, fiscal policy, the direction of the federal government, all those kind of things. Now, that we do know, there's historically different ways the two different parties tend to look at the political system, the role of government, the size of government, how much government should cost, how much money we should borrow, how much money we should spend on the military. All those kind of things definitely have an impact from this week's election. So, if you look historically, several years ago before President Biden was elected, we talked about the potential. They were describing it back then, the big blue wave. If all Congress was blue, the president's blue, what were some of the things out there that, some of these, I'll say like political talking heads and some of the institutions will put out in terms of, hey, here's the recommended or most likely policy from each one. And it was very tax centric, a lot of taxes going up. Now, thankfully, by the time a lot of that was coming to fruition, we had another election and then the House split in half, and it slowed a lot of that down. But if we look out on the horizon here, we know by the end of 2025, Trump's tax law expires.
Yep. And if they do nothing, the tax rates go up. And they're very good at doing nothing. Yeah,
absolutely. If Congress does nothing and the president signs nothing, taxes will go up at the end of next year. And so, first of all, that means for a lot of our folks, hey, we got a year and a half, still take advantage of some of these lower taxes while you can. I mean, squeak out every thousands of dollars you can at lower rates and build that. If you've heard us talk before, build up that tax-free bucket the best you can and do it now while rates are lower. Now, when they go up, they're not going up significantly, right? The 22% bracket's going up to 25. So it's not like it's for most
24
people,
to 28, but
yeah.
The wages, the space, right, in between that changes because it's going back to Obama era administration tax code for those who aren't sure, and so it's easy to bump a bracket. So they get narrower. That's the word I was looking for. They get more narrow. So it is easy to bump a bracket. So that's something to think about.
The bands will get tighter, and
There
it's
you
easier to bump up more. And so everyone will definitely feel it. I mean, especially if you're on a fixed income, you will be getting a paycheck of this, and then after the laws expire, then the next paycheck is going to be less because more went to the government. And so, from a tax standpoint, I definitely think there's two very different ways to look at how to grow the economy, how to tax the economy, and what have you. The one thing we know that both parties agree on is that if you have a lot of money in a 401k, that is not ever going to be excused as non-taxable income. If you're in a traditional tax-deferred 401k, there's basically nothing you can do to get out of paying taxes on that income because it's all.
Well, there's estimated 40 to 50 trillion dollars in traditional retirement accounts out there that have been tax deferred, and that's got a real nice bullseye on it. They want their tax money. They've been waiting. Doesn't matter who's pulling the levers for Uncle Sam. He wants his cut
for sure. And if you're one of our retired folks, let's say that's over age 73, and you're taking your required minimum distributions, you're saying, man, this sucks because I need X amount coming out every single month. And if I need that $5,000 a month and I'm having to take out $6,500 because I got to pay the tax man, it's not fun. And it impacts, your retirement plan significantly.
And it impacts your income, which could impact your IRMA. It could impact your other. So I always learned it like this, Scott, and I think that's a fun way to remember. You got two relatives with their hand in your pocket your entire life, or possibly your later life, and it's your Uncle Sam and your Aunt Irma, and she's got her hand in your pocket, and that's that income-related monthly adjustment amount. It can change your Social Security, your Medicare premiums, right? So that's another piece of it. So it's a little one that people don't talk about much, but it's there too.
Absolutely. And I think that the more people can be engaged in driving tax efficiency now, building intentional tax-free and after-tax wealth now, and then compound that on their side. I mean, being young is the time to do it. When you're 65 and saying, okay, I saved all this money up for retirement, even if I'm a multimillionaire, now you might not be having discussions about making sure I'm not going to run out of money.
Right.
You might be having some discussions around like, man, this sucks that I'm in these higher tax.
How can I get tax efficient quick? Yeah.
And a lot of times it ain't going to happen quick because that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
You throw a mid-career pilot, making, maybe household income of $400,000 to $600,000 a year, you're already in those pretty upper brackets on the tax system. We got to make sure that we're being intentional with building tax-free wealth as much as we can now, and then finding that balance of deferring because I'm in a high bracket, and then understanding that when I retire, my income's going to come down, but are the tax rates going to go up? And then it ends up being a moot point. And so just being able to think through those things and diversify ourselves from a tax standpoint makes all sort of sense regardless of who's going to be in office. Now,
well, not to get too political, but we'll throw some stuff out there for folks to just kind of, ponder on their own because they may be catching this anyway after it. So it may not matter anyway, as far as trying to sway someone, because that's not the point. But former U.S. Comptroller David Walker, who worked under several presidents, said the last fiscally responsible president we had was Bill Clinton. Now, we've had a number of presidents since Bill Clinton. So to hear that none of them have been fiscally responsible is A, not shocking, and B, kind of shocking, right? So it's like we need some fiscal responsibility. You can't run your household. You can't be a pilot. You can't be a person working in a job and running your family household the way the government. We all know this as Americans. We cannot operate our household the way the government operates and not go under, right? So we need some efficiency. But until that happens, are we taxing our way out of it? Who knows? That's a possibility. It's a scary possibility.
Well, and the other thing I think is really interesting is when we look at how not only tax rates, but how tax law changes. One of the biggest things that Trump rolled out was the higher standard deduction. And so that higher standard deduction really makes owning maybe like a side hustle or a small business, a little bit less lucrative from a tax perspective, because hey, if I'm writing off $15,000 a year of stuff for a business that's making me 30, I don't know, maybe I sell firearms on the side, or I, run a little travel business or my own little aviation company or something, who knows, but
right.
It's less lucrative because the write-offs that I get from my business don't even, go above the standard deduction that my wife and I get for just existing. Yeah. And so that'll be
which I think is why they were considering, I think, if he gets in tonight and they do kind of codify or whatever they call it when they're going to kind of keep the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in place, I think there's some tweaks they're wanting to put into that to maybe bring back deductions. I know that was talked about, but again, we won't know yet, and it doesn't happen tomorrow. So
exactly. Yeah. And regardless who wins, there's going to be some changes that come for taxes. We know that. So really keeping our thumb on that pulse, I think, is important. Again, building investment policy off of who's in office, I think, is a bad idea. Building some short-term tax tactics, very important. Watching the tax laws, seeing what comes out, because there's nuances every single year. Even after the Tax Jobs Act came out, we still had Secure 1, Secure 2.0. All those things changed. Inherited IRA distribution rules, required minimum distribution rules. They changed a lot. So tax law is constantly evolving. And so this is one I almost go the opposite on. You should definitely pay attention to who's in office, what bills are they passing, what are the implications, because there's a lot of it that just it can create a mess.
It can, and that's just at the federal level. You're not even talking about salt taxes.
Yes.
So that's local races. We get so focused on the major, on the Super Bowl, as you put it, we don't think about some of the playoffs. And so these local races, your salt taxes, state and local taxes, for those folks who are not familiar with that, that's a big deal too.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's significant state to state, right?
It is,
in terms of what those implications are. And for most states, it might be 2 to 5% or whatever the case is. You get out to Florida, it's down at 0. You get out to California, it's up to 13 to 14%. So, the state taxes can play a big role. But those are some good considerations in terms of, hey, where am I going to live if I'm changing airlines, or I'm getting a new job, or I want to I want to, now that my kids are graduated from high school and I want to move to a location that I don't have to commute to anymore. I can just be next to my home base. All those things have financial implications. And so understanding the political dynamics from a tax standpoint definitely makes sense.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess we'll talk, we'll be back at it next week, and maybe we'll have an entirely different program to talk about to see what's going to go on from that standpoint. But as of right now, go out and do your part, vote. I know Scott and I both feel the same way about that. And also do your part. Click on the show notes descriptions and get some time on the calendar. Talk with Scott, especially if you don't have a plan or a strategy in place and you're worried about whatever it might be on your radar. Get yourself some time on his calendar. Go to retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. Check the show notes. Again, the details in the show notes there for links and information and all that good jazz. And subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Scott, my friend, have yourself a great day, and get out there and do your duty as well.
On our way. Have a great day, everybody.
We'll see you next time here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn.
Is your 401k working as hard as you are? Let's find out at thepilotsplanner.com to get started with your free full thrust 401k toolkit. Come see what a good financial co-pilot can do to help make sure your retirement is ready to take flight. Visit us at thepilotsplanner.com. That's thepilotsplanner.com.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.